everybody. My name is Dr. Wright, and I work at the Georgia Chiropractic Neurology Center, and I wanted to talk about your organs and their effect on your health. So, first things first, I want to go over the scientific name of this. So, it's the enteric nervous system. The enteric nervous system contains 200 to 600 million neurons spanning the entirety of the gastrointestinal tract. So, this is comparable to your entire spinal cord. Now, the spinal cord basically controls almost every muscle in your body. And if anyone's ever had any problems with it, you'll understand that it's highly important. And that's pretty well understood, I believe. Now, the enteric nervous system is just as much, if not a little greater, in equivalence. It's part of the autonomic nervous system. Autonomic you could equate to automatic, such as breathing when you're not thinking, or heat and cold regulation, digestion of foods. And this system can operate independently, in fact. But there is a lot of interplay between the brain and the gut. So the first thing I want to talk about is regulation of the gut motility. So this is one of the things that your enteric nervous system does. Now, gut motility is essentially your organs oscillating or moving. So if you eat something, say a sandwich, goes into your belly, and your belly has to do stuff with it, it's got to digest it, and then it's going to go down from your stomach into your intestines, and it's got to travel and disperse into all the goodies so you can have energy. The next thing would be microbiome metabolism. Now, this is important for several reasons. So your body has bacteria in it, and it's a very good thing. You want it to have it in there. So the bacteria does a couple things. So there are things that people are probably more familiar with called prebiotics, but there are also postbiotics. So first off, prebiotics is essentially it's the food that bacteria eat. So there are things that we put in our bodies that we eat that we cannot necessarily break down. And the bacteria we have in our body will do it for us, or at least aid into it to some degree. And then there are postbiotics. So those are the things that the bacteria eat are prebiotics that we can't digest, and then they'll make these nice little things that aid our body. So for one thing, there are certain bacteria that will produce a hormone called oxytocin. Oxytocin is known as a love hormone. In your pituitary gland, you will naturally produce it. However, the bacteria that's found in your gut, when it's at a healthy level, will actually produce so much more than your pituitary gland can, which is a very good thing for your system. On top of that, there's microbiome regulation. So the regulation of the microbiome is highly important because you don't want something to be either too low or too high. So as I stated before, the bacterial system is crucial to have it in your system. But you don't want it to be on these different levels. So an example would be a strep infection. So if you get a strep infection, it can be from a bacterial thing that allows too much overgrowth in this certain area, and then it's dominating, and then all of a sudden, because it's so much, the stuff that it produces, it irritates and it's irregular to your skin and to your throat, and it causes these symptoms, and you're sick. Okay, so the regulation of it would be to downregulate and keep the competition equal so that it only gives you the good stuff that you want. The next thing would be secretion of hormones and enzymes. So example of that would be as soon as you eat something, your saliva will actually produce things called amylase, and that will break down food immediately. And there's actually thoughts of it, based on the research, that it actually almost tags it and tells it where to send it in the body before you even digest it, which is why it's important to chew your food. A hormone would be, say, testosterone or estrogen, which is things that we'll be getting into later. So blood flow is an important one. So you have your abdominal aorta, which is your main and kind of biggest artery in your body, located in the enteric nervous system gateway, so the gut itself. So blood flow is highly important. It regulates basically, a lot of things in your body. It allows transportation of blood cells, food, these hormones themselves. So it's highly important. And then that can be regulated based on some things like, if you're scared, if you're not scared. And then finally, you have an immune response. And immune response is thought to originate in the gut. So let's say, easy examples, if you get food poisoning. So if you eat something that perhaps can poison you a little bit, then the first line of defense will be in your gut for immune response. There's several different ways it does it, but let's continue on. Okay, so I wanted to talk about 4 different things. So I want to talk about chronic abdominal pain, acid reflux, the gut to brain axis, and the visceral somatic reflex. and I'll explain all of these. So the first thing I want to talk about is menstrual cramping, so uterine pain. The name for this scientifically or medically is primary dysmenorrhea, which is a condition that causes severe pain during menstruation and doesn't have an underlying cause medically. So I put in quotes here that it's common, not normal. So what I mean by that is it's a very common thing for ladies to have, but it's not necessarily a normal physiological process. So what I mean by that is a lot of women have it, but it's not meant to be that way. As far as research kind of goes, normal actually would be no pain during cramping. Now, 33% of girls go on birth control for non-contraceptive reasons, meaning basically they go on it to control uterine pain. And I listed a little NBC News thing on it. It was a big spiel. If you want to check it out, you can. So, the primary dysmenorrhea is widely considered to be caused by an excess amount of uterine prostaglandins in the body. So then, the question is, what's a prostaglandin? So, prostaglandin is a hormone that's released around the uterine area that will either constrict or dilate. So, they can stimulate contractions as well as vasoconstricting, like I said, and that can lead to blood flow lacking in the area, which can result in pain. When you have let's say, a chronic or prolonged time without blood, you're going to have pain. Part of that reason is because there tends to be cramping that happens. So you can have it anywhere. So like, give me an example, would be a Charlie horse. It's just a muscle cramp. So if you say have a random cramp happening here and it spasms, when it spasms, it causes this contraction. It doesn't go away. You can't stop it unless you pound on it or you walk it off or whatever. Well, menstrual cramping is essentially that, and it's in the uterine area, and it causes a lot of stomach pain. And there's other things that come out of it. So back to birth control. It's most commonly it has this synthetic form of estrogen. It's called ethinyl estradiol and progesterone. So the reason I bring this up is because when you take this synthetic form of estrogen and progesterone, it will actually block your natural production of this stuff. And when it blocks the natural production of it, then it just, you don't make it as much anymore, which can arise other problems, which is why there's a lot of symptomatology that comes with taking birth control. So whenever you do it, you have a total decrease in this estradiol, which is known to be the strongest estrogen, and it's the one that kind of produces a lot of these prostaglandins. So that's the way they kind of try to control the pain, is by putting a synthetic form in there to regulate the prostaglandin amount. There are complications that do come out of this, however. So when you have increased estrogenergic activity, so the estrogen, you get mood swings or irritability, you get migraine, you get nausea, all things can come out of it, such as that. So, as we're talking about what we do here, we do myofascial release. So, this is a study. This is the effects of myofascial release on pain and uterine arterial hemodynamic. So that basically means allowing blood flow to occur. So hemodynamics is just blood flow. So this research group that was just done, 2025, they did myofascial release to see how they can change up blood flow in the uterine area of women. And they had great results. So I think in this particular study, I think it was 20 women, and the 20 women all did great. To get a little better into that, I'll give you one that has a little more details into it. The European Journal of Obstetrics and Gynecology, they took a myofascial group and they demonstrated its effectiveness against a TENS unit as well as exercise groups. And the results they came up with was enhanced pain threshold and reduced symptomatology of the menstrual cramping, as well as lower abdominal tension, which is nice. So they went for basically a month. So they saw the original results was 30% decrease in all these things, and a month later it stayed at 30% decrease. So from the beginning of the treatment to the end of the treatment, it stayed, which is nice. So that shows kind of some nice things about that. Okay, so this is the particular move, or say one move that we might do. This is essentially stretching of the uterus a little bit. And when you do that, you can release tension and you can allow blood flow to occur. And when you do this, you'll actually interact with things such as estrogens, and you can change up the prostaglandin activity and almost allow the enteric nervous system to regulate it better. Okay, so next I want to go to acid reflux. So acid reflux is a burning sensation that typically presents in the middle of the chest, and we refer to it as heartburn. So what it kind of physically is it's almost a backwash of foods or liquids, and it's accompanied by stomach acid. Now, this isn't always the case. More often than not, actually, what will happen is the almost mist or the gas from the stomach will come up, and it's so acidic that it's almost burning. So it'll burn up the esophagus a little bit up to your throat, and you'll get that hoarseness and scratchiness and that irritation. So what it is so you have a sphincter. So basically, it's like a closing. You have a closing area. When you eat, it opens, it allows it goes in, closes, so it come back up. When it doesn't close, all of that can be, say, brought back up to the surface, and it doesn't feel so good. You get all these, not so good stuff from it, such as esophageal inflammation and degradation. So inflammation being it's irritating it, and it's going to swell up. You're going to it's going to be scratchy a little bit, not feel so good. You can have some chest pain and you can't understand why, and it could be from that. Degradation, because if it's chronic enough, it's going to irritate it and put on like these little whelps or these little bumps. So every time you swallow, it's going to hurt, things like that. And that can go all the way down to the stomach itself. Next, you have bacterial overgrowth. So as I said before, this system worked a lot with bacteria. So having the overgrowth of bacteria is not necessarily a good thing, because you want it to be regulated into a level that is healthy. So when you have an overgrowth, then you're just going to get all these symptoms, like I said before, with like strep, or let's say you have like a staph infection, because infections only occur when it's too much. So because this can happen because of the acid flow going up there, and it kind of destroys the lining that's a protective mechanism. Okay, so next would be a change of pH of the small intestine. So food will go into your stomach, and then from the stomach it'll go into the small intestine. The small intestine's job is actually to absorb all the nutrients. So when I say pH change, I'm talking about something going from acidic to maybe more of a base. So if you ever took chemistry class, it's like basically your water is a 7 and it's a neutral, and it's like you're fine with that. If you get really acidic, like the classic green acid burns you, that's kind of like how the stomach acid is. Alkalinity, which is closer to a base, is not like that. It's the opposite spectrum. And then bacteria will grow greater depending on the pH level it is. Your body kind of has a standard regulatory system that it wants it at. So when you have things such as acid reflux occurring, it's offsetting the acid production and proliferation into these other organs and the pH level that's situated there. And when the pH level changes, it'll change up the bacterial growth of some bacteria and lessen it of others. So you'll get a thing called SIBO, meaning small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. Intestinal bacterial overgrowth is a thing that a lot of medical doctors, they try to treat with a lot of antibiotics, just bomb it. But in our experience, a lot of that can come from having acid reflux, and getting it fixed through myofascial treatment can support it greatly. Now, protein digestion will be decreased because of this, because if you're having, say, spillage or just a let go of all this acid, then the protein's not getting the time to essentially cook. When it gets cooked, it'll kind of melt away, and then you have all these nice little proteins that'll go, and you can absorb them in the small intestine, and then it can be dispersed. And with this, it's not as great as it could be. So I wanted to show you a move that we do that helps with this. So this is a move. Basically, you hold on the belly region and you pull down, and then you allow, here, I'll show you this. So you allow for this big fat pad here. So there's a big fat pad that you can see here, okay? And then this big yellow thing, you basically grab it, and it's almost like a mesh, if you will. And then you pull on it, and then you hold it, and you allow the patient to breathe. And what this does is it'll bring the stomach closer to where it naturally should be. So the way I tend to think about it is I tend to think that the stomach is a little bit pushed into the rib cage a little bit more than it should be, which almost takes it and squeezes it. And then when it's trying to produce acid to break down the food, the acid is getting pushed up the system when it really shouldn't be. So when you bring the organ back down closer to, let's say, midline, then you allow more room. More room allows the acid to be where it needs to be, allows food to go in, and you shouldn't get acid reflux. It's a very nice move. Next, we have irritable bowel syndrome. So the cause of irritable bowel syndrome is thought to be unknown. However, current research says it's due to problems in the gut-brain axis or bacterial overgrowth. So some symptoms you can get from this is abdominal cramping, of course, constipation, diarrhea, bloating, or gas. So what is a gut-brain axis? So essentially, if you get whacked on the head, it can affect your gut. That's kind of the crux of it. Or if you get too much injuries or too much inflammation in your gut, it can affect your brain. It goes in or bi-directional pathway. So symptoms you can get from stuff like this could be urinary incontinence, could be food intolerance or allergies, gluten's a big one. You can get hot flashes or cold chills, heart rate variability. Other things you can get from it could be anxiety or disruptions to your enteroception system. So like I said, the brain centers and the gut have a bidirectional. So gut sends stuff up and the brain sends stuff down and they talk back and forth. So I'll give you some examples of that. So anxiety and self-awareness can be highly regulated in your gut due to this structure in your brain called a rostral insular cortex. So if you have inflammation in your gut, it could actually affect your brain. I'll give you an example kind of that is if you've ever been on stage and been nervous and you get these butterflies in your gut and you're like, oh man, I'm really nervous. It's like, yeah, you feel it in your belly, but it's really from your brain, you know? The next would be a premotor cortex. So that would be changes in gut motility and tone based on movement. So then you're kind of thinking about the brain almost changing like constipation kind of stuff or like really hard stomach, things like that. And then you have your medulla, and that is the lowest part of your brainstem, and it controls stomach function as well as nausea centers. Nausea centers is a pretty classic one for this, actually. That's why if you have stuff to your stomach, it's attached to it basically because you can have a vomiting reflex from it. So let's say if you have irritation to your stomach, then it'll send up a message to your brain. Brain's like, hey, I need to get this out of my system. And it'll say, blow, and get it out. So these things can have an interplay with each other. So some of the things that we would do for this, for instance, would be this machine called an RPSS. It's this little box, we put probes on it, and it sends a tiny little bit of electricity. And one of the areas that we like to do would be your tongue. So the tongue is activated by a cranial nerve, which is a nerve in your brain, on the lowest part of your brainstem, in the medulla, the nausea center area. So that area is a really common one that we'd like to work on when it comes to fixing a gut-to-brain axis, for example. Lastly, I want to talk about a visceral somatic reflex. So a visceral somatic reflex is a problem in the organ that can cause a reaction in the musculoskeletal system. Basically, I'm saying organ hurts, you're not going to feel it in the organ most likely, you're going to feel it in the muscle. So I'll give you an example. Gallbladder weakness can cause pain in the right scapular region, right under the right shoulder. So if my gallbladder is not doing so well, I'm going to have pain right here in my right shoulder. It's a pretty common area. A lot of people have it. That one is a little more well known, and there's several of them. Another could be kidney pain, or kidney weakness rather, causing lower back pain. People have low back pain, and maybe you'll go see people, and it's like, doc, it's just not going away. I can't fix it. And it's like, yeah, it's your kidney. Now, it's not always like that, but, that's an example. Next, you can have lung weakness. And a lung weakness can cause directly in the middle of your upper back, can cause pain and irritation, I'll give you some examples of more of them. So you've got a whole list here. You've got heart, lung, esophagus, and they can refer to all these different areas. I mean, these are essentially trigger points that are organ-based. Because a lot of times your organs are like, hey man, I'm hurting, but I can't really tell you, so I'm going to go make this muscle hurt so you know what's up. And then we've just been blessed enough that we know how to do this. It's really cool. And these are the deals. Okay, so thank you so much for listening to my talk. If you guys want to schedule a complimentary consultation, you can either email us at office@healthybrainnow.com or give us a call at the office number. Thanks so much for listening to my talk. Hope you guys have a great day.